Join our knowledgeable hosts as they dive into the captivating universe of comic books, movies, TV shows, and pop culture. Get ready for vibrant discussions and a shared enthusiasm for all things superhero and beyond. A comic podcast straight from the panels. This is Beyond the Capes.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Cape podcast. With us today is Owen and Morgan Rosenblum. Welcome to the show.
What's up, Ryan? How you doing?
What's going on,
All
dude?
right. We're good, and we're here to discuss your book, Ramgod. Now, is this a first for you guys?
First for me, not for him.
It's our first brotherly tag, duo. As a writer duo. It's funny, I'm a writer, I can't even speak. But yeah, I've written a few comics before and graphic novels, but this is our first one as like a brother, shared title.
Yeah, exactly. The Brothers Bloom right here.
Now, is this always something you guys had talked about kind of growing up, or like something you kind of always wanted to do, but it just never happened? Or is it just you thought it would be fun?
Well, Morgan, as he said before, he got into the space before I did. I come from my background's in video production. So like seeing him kind of enter the space and be, relatively successful at it, I was like, oh, that is, it's just an interesting medium. We've always loved comics and graphic novels and like things like that and just amazing artwork and working with creatives and seeing him do that firsthand. I was like, oh, okay, I got to get involved in this.
In fairness, too, though, like Owen's worked with me on other graphic novel projects that I've done before, but never as like a co-writer, right? He would kind of come in after it was already like the world was like built and, definitely not on like the actual like ground floor and the writing part of it. So this was like Owen had an idea like during COVID, right? Like I remember you coming to me being like, dude, I want to write like a comic with you or like do something. And I'm like, all right, well, you have an idea or something like that? And he's like, I have something. I'm like, all right, but you don't feel like you have to pitch it right now. Like I want you to kind of do your homework and like really sell me on the idea, like put a lot of thought into it so that, if we're going to do this, it's gotta be done right. So we went in like, kind of went in the laboratory and like worked for a while and it's fun. Like, all right, I have something. And I was like, all right, what do you got?
He vetted me. He vetted me pretty. I didn't get any like preferential treatment because I'm a sibling. In fact, it was probably the opposite. He was like extra critical and more harsh about like me needing to, step my game up and everything else. Because as I said, coming from video production, I'm a producer by trade. So writing to me, I was always making other people's creatives a reality, but making my own has kind of always been the biggest struggle and something that was new to me. But I really kind of pulled that thread and leaned into it with this property. And it's been an extremely rewarding experience, I must say.
Yeah. Now, I guess for Owen mainly, so obviously video production, as you said, was your kind of previous, and I don't know if it still is or you're still was it easier than kind of seeing people like bring a script or like reading a script and then being like, all right, this I kind of at least have an idea of like what a layout looks like, and this kind of helps with making.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've said this kind of in other interviews before and things like that, is basically like visual mood boards. And if you're like creating a commercial and things like that, you board these things out, right? And like each board is essentially like its own panel in a comic. And for me, I always loved that process in like, commercial video production and things like that. So taking that kind of framework and knowing how to work with artists in that way, and then bringing it into, either animation and post and working with editors and whatever, and also being, on set with live action actors and whatnot, it kind of helped me understand where the final product ideally would end up going if I was to take this from the page to, as I said, real live action stuff. And basically having had that experience and seeing Morgan do it firsthand, I was like, okay, it was just, I connected the dots, I think, quicker than I would normally have if I hadn't had that experience.
Yeah. And then Morgan, for you, was it easier kind of working with your brother? Just because, I mean, you guys kind of grow up, so at least you kind of know like the idiosyncrasies of like, all right, well, I know like my brother's never going to understand this, but I do know he will understand this reference.
Yeah, well, we definitely, I mean, reference-wise, it's like definitely on the same level. Like we like all the, for the most part, we like all the same movies and shows and like comics and books.
Yeah,
and
that
whatever.
actually might be the area that we have the most overlap of everything.
Like,
yeah.
We'll just sometimes like spit like 4 lines of something, and the other, you know, will be like, never-ending story or something like that, or you know, like
exactly.
we're constantly dropping like.
My memory is awful, except when it comes to like useless movie and TV show quotes. And like especially old ones, you know, from like the early 90s and whatnot. Like
So I think when we first started like the project together, Owen was really focusing on like the world building and like the setting, which was great. But I'm very character focused. I think at the heart of any, you know, story, no matter how creative you can be with your world building, you have to have like really grounded and relatable characters. That's what makes the audiences and the readers connect with it. So I challenged Owen with like, okay, well, but who are the characters? And like, you know, they were very archetypical at first. And we needed to go deeper, right? Like what are their motivations? Like what makes them tick? Why is anyone gonna give a shit about them? You know?
Yeah.
So and then as I was like kind of like preaching and teaching Owen along this process, I was actually very surprised to see him to be really good at dialogue writing. And so I've worked in different styles where like when I've worked with other writers where like they'll send me, you know, like a scene, or we'll be working on things separately and then kind of like compare and contrast, you know, and see how the scenes work together. And then in other cases, I've literally sat on calls and like written with the other co-writer, which is what Owen and I did in a lot of cases where we were literally like, as we're talking through dialogue in real time, that it is helpful to kind of bounce back and forth because you're almost impersonating the characters that you're doing it and kind of getting in the headspace a little bit.
We like to do that. And for us, we would be like, that doesn't sound natural. Like no one would actually say that like in that way. So we're a good sounding board for each other in that way.
Yeah, that's nice to have someone, I guess, to kind of understand your process a little bit, to bounce the ideas back and forth. Now, were you guys growing up, was this always like a creative, like kind of ideation, like for the future for you guys, where you're just like you both knew like somewhere in the future, like this is kind of what I want to do, like either video or writing or illustrate something?
Well, Morgan, I'll go here. Morgan was like always the artist in the family. Like he actually can draw and illustrate. I don't think on the level of some of the artists we work with now, but at least when we were like way younger, Morgan was very talented for his age to do that, and I had no talent in that way with my hands like that. So, but I would always watch him and kind of stand behind him and like almost like art direct him.
Yeah.
Right. Be like, you know, change
like
this.
Coach me up. Yeah, he would. Be like, now give him like an eye patch or
yeah, exactly. And we just kind of like took that to the next level. But it was almost like nostalgic for us because we did it as kids, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, it's just, that has to be easy, just kind of knowing, again, the background going forward. Now, with this comic book, it's very action heavy. Was that like are you, like your movies or comic books, like are you guys big action fans, or was that just kind of that was the easiest thing that came to mind, like it just kind of built itself?
I mean, we are action fans, you know. Like I love like some of the classic like Michael Bay stuff, like, you know, Speed is Michael Bay, right? And
no,
like, I think it is.
Oh, Michael Bay. Yeah, I'm thinking
Michael
Michael Mann. I don't like Michael Bay's stuff too much.
No, like, but then
anymore, like the Rock. The Rock was great.
Rock,
the Rock was very good.
The original Bad Boys, like that, like those kind of movies for me, like always.
Yeah, I like old Michael Bay. Maybe I was thinking Michael Mann, who in my opinion is a fantastic, director.
Yeah, that's like a different type of thing, you know. Like obviously, like Heat and Collateral and those things are great, but they're different. I'm talking about like old school Michael Bay stuff where it wasn't like Transformers, where it's like the entire world and universe is at stake. It's like people, like a group of people trapped in an elevator, you know, in like a building. Like that to me was always more like people on a bus and there's a bomb on a bus. That type of thing was always like a tight lens, you know, in kind of a big world kind of thing, which Morgan and I say a lot, and we like to bring that New York City kind of approach to our creative writing and stuff like that.
Well, to answer your question that you said, do we really love action? I do love action, but I like character dramas first and like substance. I think like if you try to go in focusing on the action, you're going to get a pretty hollow story. And then really you're just kind of relying on the art panels and the artwork itself only to tell the story, because I don't know how much great writing you can do from like an action standpoint. There's no like arc or character arc. And this is coming from like a boxer who like understands martial arts to a degree and fighting and like the art form behind it. It's, you know, just something else. Like when we write action scenes, like we try to, you know, we think about, well, how will it, like, where's the tension and the peaks, you know, and the valleys of that? What's at stake kind of thing. And obviously also like camera angles, but that's very technical stuff. But as far as like, you know, writing, we wanted to make sure that it had a fast-paced feel to it, Ramgod that is, and that, you know, like there definitely like was a lot to visually comprehend. And as you've seen in it, like in the comic, we put a lot of thought into like not just the colors, the lighting, but like everything from like what's going on in the backgrounds of some of the shots too, which because there's a lot of story elements that are part of the world building and part of the experience, and like little Easter eggs that we've planted throughout that if you're paying close attention, you're like, oh, wait a second, is that supposed to be? Oh.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's very visual, very stylized, and it definitely tells a lot. Because I think it was in the first few panels where it had the percentage of like wearing a mask for like air quality, and then like you kind of see like the bleaks, the browns, and like once they decrepit buildings, but not the best. And then like immediately it jumps over and it's like, oh no, you're safe. Take off the mask. There's trees.
Yeah, in the wealthy areas. Yeah, it's like that was done on purpose for sure.
Definitely, and it worked out really well.
Thank you.
Now, for comic book info, I mean, obviously, Morgan, you have a lot of experience in that, and then that really helped for this project. But were you guys both big comic book fans growing up, or like maybe a graphic novel here and there, but you're more of a story fan than anything than a comic book? It just the comic book medium helped tell your story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the latter is probably more true. We love just storytelling in general, whether that could be in the form of a song, could be like a show, it could be just a prose book or even a poem in some cases. What I think the interesting thing for us is that Owen and I got into stories primarily because of comics, because we were bad readers, or we just had really bad ADHD and it was hard to get us to focus. So as a kid, our dad would bring us to a comic book store to sort of like help us to get excited about reading, because at least it was like a kind of account. You still have to read a little bit in there, but all the descriptions are just visual action, right? The dialogue is really the only thing, or maybe some monologues and stuff, but that actually shows up as text. So that really kind of got us into that. And it's such a visual medium. And if you really think about the precision of comics, right? Because it's like watching a TV show or movie, except that you're pausing. Like it's like, tell me the story in only 30 panels. Or something like that, right? Like, think about how hard that would be to do.
Yeah,
like, what's the actual best panel to convey the entire art, like emotional roller coaster of that episode or of that movie? That's like what a comic does, and if done right, it's like it's a work of art, you know, in more ways than just the drawn medium.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We've had past, I know, screenwriters that have adapted to comic books, and that was always the hardest part from. Like, oh, I got 200-page script. How many pages do I got? 28 pages. All right, let me break it down panel by panel. You really have to kind of flesh out the story you want to tell and pick the key things that are going to have the biggest impact, which is always obviously a difficult task. But again, like I said, I think that worked out really well. Now, Owen, obviously this is kind of a first step for you. What was one of the hardest parts about kind of learning this process and just like really grasping?
That's a good question. I would say, I think, because I kind of understood what the process of making a comic and graphic novel was, because as Morgan said before, you know, I work in production and I had worked with him on other comics and graphic novels. So I knew, you know, that you start with a sequential artist, you know, after you've written and do your thing and you have your script, you have the sequential artist and then you have the colorist and letterer and whatnot, and kind of how that process works. But for me personally, I think it goes back to kind of what Morgan was saying about like the precision that is involved ahead of time, is like what visually we're going to show and why certain lines of dialogue have to make sense with what we're showing. And I think just the visual narrative and having it be cohesive and art styles and all these things like flowing together to create this kind of uniform thing. And that to me was challenging. And then kind of once you get into the swing of it, you're like, okay, no, I got this. Like, let's go. And Morgan was really great at guiding me, I would say, probably throughout the creative process, and just him understanding the medium so well helped, tap it, like let me feel like I had some freedom, and I didn't have to worry as much about some of the other more nitty gritty stuff that's related to the industry.
Yeah, it's kind of like you have like a more veteran coach, Like, in fairness too, we also had a really good support team, with Joe Illage being our story editor when I was at Heavy Metal. Because for those who don't know, this story was I used to be the managing editor and creative director at Heavy Metal, and Owen had come to me with the idea for Ramgod during COVID when I was at Heavy Metal, and they're also tough as far as what new serials and series they want to greenlight in the first place. So I also knew that I'm like, all right, we don't have to bring it to Heavy Metal. Obviously, we can bring it. We can, I had another book with Dark Horse at the time, and there's other places we could bring it. We could even self-publish if we wanted to. But at the time, being there, I was like, this feels like a good fit at Heavy Metal. And then that's ultimately kind of what led to Massive, because Whatnot, the company, which is Massive's subsidiary or sister company or something like that, had sort of gotten in a conversation with Heavy Metal about kind of co-publishing the magazine to get it out of a hole that they were going through. And ultimately the Heavy Metal as the magazine kind of had a pause for financial reasons, which is all public knowledge now. But Massive had shown a lot of interest in Ramgod at the time. And so our title had been kind of stuck with that, in this magazine that wasn't coming out anytime soon. And we're like, well, crap, we didn't take a writer fee on this because we put everything into the art and making sure that we could get the book made on, quickly and then get it out there. And now we don't have, they own the artwork, but they can't publish it because they don't have the rights to it. It was kind of,
we were in purgatory kind of.
So what do we do? So
for a little while with the project and Massive really, we got it back, and it was totally amicable and everything else. But we just, at the end of the day, we wanted our project, to get out there and to be released. And Massive was always the perfect partner. And then with, them kind of doing their own thing and the stuff happening with Heavy Metal, we were like, hey, Massive, you guys, we get this back. You still want to do this? They're like, absolutely. So, it was a match made in heaven.
Definitely. Now, obviously, I'm assuming this is obviously co-writing. This is your first co-writing book together. Did you guys write kind of in close proximity, or was it more Owen drafted the first draft, he kind of laid out the foundation, he sent it to you, you kind of added some notes, added what you wanted a character, and you just sent it back and forth, or did you ever kind of do a live table, face to face?
That's a great question. Actually, in the beginning, as we said, this was during COVID when we were creating this and everything. So Morgan and I were actually living together at the time. Okay. So in the beginning of this, it was ideal in that way. When Morgan and I are like physically together, like we get a lot of stuff done. That's for sure. And we limit our distractions around us. And then obviously, you know, when we went our separate ways like that, we were just doing everything kind of virtual.
But still like Zoom or, you know, the Google Meet or whatever. Like, to answer your question, I don't think we ever handled like a scene independently and then shared it and was like, what do you think?
No.
For notes. The whole process. Anytime we were like, we knew it was going to be like between a 6 and 8 like issue arc or chapter arc. It was a little different at the time because we were doing it in the magazine. So the magazine like breaks it into like chunks of 14 pages, which is like kind of a weird number. So we went about it more of like, okay, well, what is overall the story going to be? Like, what's the kind of like the flow and the arc for the story, and where the acts, like the key, you know, turning point's going to be, and then how from there, how do we break that up? Because we have, you know, like the A storyline, which is the overarching narrative, and then there's like the B and C storyline. The B storyline being more like kind of the father-son dynamic between Clint, the main character, and his teenage kid Malcolm, who he's not particularly close with. So like for anyone listening that is like, wait a second, I keep talking about Ramgod, but like, what's it about and all that stuff? It's a cyberpunk thriller, action thriller with a lot of heart. It's about a, you know, former a collegiate star athlete that just had kind of some dark catch up with him and derail him from the NFL career that he thought he was guaranteed to have. And then we meet Clint sort of like well past his prime. He's certainly not an old man. He's like, 35, but definitely like old for an athlete, right? Or on the older side. So that window is like really close. And he's like now a cop out of all things. Not particularly close with his kid, but and like while he wants to be a good dad, he's just hasn't really put his best foot forward in that regard. Like he just is kind of, I don't want to say aloof, but like he doesn't seem like he's making it a priority. Like he's been kind of a selfish dude most of his life. So anyway, his kid's favorite sport is this newish sport that's kind of taken over the globe called Ramgod. That's like somewhere in between Tron, American Ninja Warrior, Formula One racing, and then like old school gladiator or UFC styled, where like the stakes are really high. Like you can die in the sport. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's definitely like the mortality rate's the highest out of any sport there is, right? And one of the teams, and like so Malcolm, the kid, his favorite team is the Barracudas, right? There's 8 teams in the league, and this one team is the only team that's like not owned by like an owner. It's owned by the people, meaning that they get their funds to like afford the gear and travel and insurance and all that stuff from like a Patreon or like GoFundMe type of crowdsourcing network. And that that Malcolm contributes to. He's a guppy, right? Like a hardcore fan of the Barracudas. So what winds up happening though is the league is now introducing like a new rule, which is like every team has to bring on a 5th player to their team, right? A human player, because every team also has like one bot, but like they have to bring on a human for the new league year that's coming up. And what we find out, and this is not really giving anything away because in the synopsis, that one of the teams, the Barracudas, are actually like moonlighting as bank robbers, and that's where they actually are really getting their money from. Like, yes, they still get it from the crowdfunding source, but it's certainly not enough through that. So maybe at some point they can just do it that way. But I also think they kind of live for the thrill of the heist. Yeah. So they've been robbing banks the old-fashioned way, and then laundering and cleaning the money through the crowdsourcing platform. Anyway, nobody knows that except for so it's like a very close-knit group, the Barracudas are. And so whoever they're going to bring on as their 5th and new player to the team, they need to make sure that like the dude, the rock star, like in the arena and can hang in like multiple sports, because Ramgod is really like 3 different heats. It's racing, it's combat, like fighting, and then it's climb or descent. It's called climb, but it could be descent. It could be like first one down from the top of an active volcano, and it's all like an Olympic point system. So it's pretty cool. And it's like even just creating the sport itself was a lot of fun, because that was like its own storyline in and of itself. Like how do we build and create a really cool new sport? Like everyone that's read it thus far and is like that we've kind of walked them through and they ask us questions are always like, this needs to be a real sport or like a video game at the bare minimum. Like, holy crap, I want to play this thing. So that that part of it's cool. But
because basically when we were creating this series, and as Morgan said, we put so much thought into the sport because our whole thing is like, Clint, our main character, and his kind of storyline, it's still he is still a player in a new sport, and our thing was like there can be a bunch of simultaneous different storylines happening at going on at the same time that exist with the sport. So we have to put a lot of thought into it. We have to put a lot into the sponsors that own the teams and why this sponsor owns X team and kind of all the players on each team. And we, even though they're not like super showcased in certain issues and whatnot, like we still put the thought for their backstories and background, because you never know down the line who we're going to kind of showcase and talk about.
Yeah, no, definitely the first time reading it, I think the sport just grabs everyone's attention because it obviously hasn't been seen. My first thing was always death race and rollerball.
There's definitely a lot of those elements in there too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And like the Running Man and things like that.
Yeah.
The other kind of neat thing about it, Ryan, I think, is that the fact that like Clint, our main character, is also new to the sport. Like he doesn't know it. The league's like in its 3rd year, right? Or like had just finished its 2nd year and now it's going in its 3rd year. So like Clint learns it as the audience learns it, which is a great sort of mechanism for us to sort of like introduce the sport. Because the team needs to teach him. Like Clint's a superstar athlete. Even like he's just got balls of steel and like has just no fear when it comes to everything. Right? He wants to win so bad in everything he does.
Yeah,
he's got that killer instinct, which obviously translates well.
He's a cop, So you're kind of mixing that natural athleticism and his competitive edge with, him having seen some really crazy stuff, being a cop in New City. So is that kind of perfect hybrid that makes him perfect for this sport.
Yeah, and that's the other big thing too, right? So like the team all know that he's a cop. So like unlike we liken ourselves, like it's a little bit like Fast and the Furious or like the original Point Break with Keanu Reeves, where like like there's a group of bank robbers that are also athletes, right? They're surfers in one movie, and then they're race car drivers in the other. And the difference though is that in our story, the cop is not an undercover cop that's trying to like infiltrate this group. He has no idea. And they're actually in like the Barracudas in the story, the bank robbers are like, they know that this cop actually has like a dark past, because we find out the reason that he never made it into the NFL is because like he had ties to organized crime and stuff. Like he, at a very young age, he got under the wing of like a mobster, and was just kind of, he was like the, Frank Sinatra unofficially affiliated kind of thing.
Yeah.
But not like with the Italian mob, like with the Chinese mob of all things. Like his high school, his like Pop Warner teammate, right? This kid Kevin winds up like, it turns out his uncle is like the head of the Chinese mob, and like Mr. Zhao takes Clint underneath his wing and is like, hey kiddo, like I don't need to, I'm not trying to exploit you. I have all this stuff. Like who's got your best interest at heart? I've been there for you before I knew you were going to be this big thing, right? And so like, he hooks Clint into it, and Clint's a good guy though, in the sense that like he's not gonna, when he gets implicated for these things, he doesn't like implicate them back. He keeps his mouth shut. Yeah, he's not a rat at all. So like when the Barracudas are doing their homework on him, like due diligence, they're like, oh okay, this guy, like he never turned on the other, even though he had an opportunity, he was facing jail time. Now he got lucky that he didn't have to serve, but like he didn't know that.
Yeah, he's got the right characteristics to kind of fit their dynamic.
Kind of what they need, yeah.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day too, they're like, and like everyone's got a weakness, and like we'll be able to exploit his too, like and kind of hinting at his kid, right? And that really kind of ties everything together, which is okay. So at its core, the story is about a guy who's kind of missed his lane in life that he thought, right? He's kind of living in his own shadow at this point of what could have been, while being like not a great dad because he's still too focused on himself. But then finally gets an opportunity to kind of kill two birds with one stone, where he gets to get a second chance of the life he wanted. While now, I mean, his son is a diehard Ramgod fan and a Barracudas fan, and now all of a sudden, holy crap, my dad's a Barracuda. Like, okay, yeah, dad. He's starting to see his dad as in a different light. But what winds up becoming the conflict and the real dilemma is that the more that Clint gets into this world, right, the more that, and like he gets tied to the crime and everything else that's going on. Like he's putting his kid's like innocence at risk. And so he's going to have to make that choice where it's like, do I keep going deeper, or do I do what's right to protect my kid? Because the longer that I wait to make this decision, the more likely he is going to be to get,
right. We don't like squeaky clean protagonists. That's kind of a boring thing for us. So we like people that are deeply flawed. So
Spawn was like our first like comic. So you asked us in the beginning of the interview, like, what kind of comics do you read? We do read comics. Or at least we definitely did growing up a whole lot more than I would say we do now. And it's not that we don't love comics now. We're just so busy like writing our own stuff, really. Yeah. That it's like I spend every waking moment just like writing and creating, and then so like I don't read as much as I used to. But Spawn, like X-Men, and like I like Wildcats a lot too. I'm a big Jim Lee fan. Like especially from an art standpoint. So yeah, those are like the three main ones that I would.
Yeah. Now what's really interesting, at least to me, is I read the first issue, and and you could kind of see like where the storyline's going to go, which is always nice. Like you give people just enough story that they can kind of predict. They can see a path. They just don't know how they're going to get to the path. But I'm more curious, is you guys wrote a story that makes me wonder, how did we get to this story? I don't know if after this, like you kind of maybe put out the first couple of issues and wrote it, and then you kind of, if you've ever thought about like, like now we've written this, I can maybe go back and do a prequel. How did Ramgod start? How did we get to this? Because you could, like I said in the beginning, we talked about the two different higher class and lower class. Like, how did we get to such a divide in society? Was it natural, or was there some sort of event, or how did this all happen?
I'm glad you kind of bring that up. It was funny because we mulled over this for quite some time, where I kind of like equated to, what was it? What did we say, Morgan? We said like Wall-E meets Ready Player One kind of thing. Like when you think about like what happened to like humanity and the advancement of technology and everything else, it was like our reliance on those things. We basically stopped contributing in those things. It was like human beings stopped contributing to society, to the growth,
because they were like plugged in that stuff all the time, right? Like literally, we imagine that when Owen was saying Ready Player One, not that our story is anything like Player One, but the past of this, like our story takes place in the future, right? On Earth and in the United States, I guess. Like we never actually say exactly where it is, which is fine because we wanted to feel sort of like a metropolis or a Gotham where it could be anywhere. Like it's just like it's a city that's more representative than anything else. But yeah, like how did we get to this future? Well, what was the history? What was the middle part, I guess, or like what came before this? So as Owen was saying, like the Ready Player One idea is like, cool. So VR became like a big thing, and same with augmented reality and whatever. And everyone was tuning in and logging in, but that led to sort of like less efficiency as a society, less care for our health, and like for what's like even cleaning up, like trash became more like people stopped taking care of themselves. And so ultimately they realized that it was taking a hit on society as a whole and just like, the economy. And ultimately it was like how governments kind of like started talking to big corporations being like, how do we, fix this problem? And then they came up with like the idea of like Ramgod and finding ways.
Basically, we still want people to be consumers, right?
Yeah.
Consumers like drives the global economy. But at the same time, like people are too plugged in to like virtual stuff that it's actually hurting what we're trying to do as consumers in its own way. So they were like, and that hence the creation of Ramgod, basically. And that started to get people unplugged, but still consuming.
Yeah.
Think of it this way, right? Like the more plugged in you are, the more likely you are to forget to eat, to take care of yourself, to do other things, to use water, to do everything else, right? So we were thinking like, oh, well then products and companies would actually feel this, right? If like they're not selling as much cereal, or they're not, the garbage disposal waste is coming as often because people aren't just they're not living enough to use up the stuff. So to stimulate the economy, they decided how do we get people more involved in like the actual real life activities, and like Ramgod became like a featured thing for that. In such that, to give like specifics, right? The event courses, like as you saw in issue 1, like it actually the race course takes place in like the entire city. Like they almost like the Macy's Day Parade, where they like create like or like the marathon, right? Like where they segment certain parts of the city, so you can actually go to your window of your like small little apartment and actually get to watch this event live, because at some point like the part of the race goes right by your street kind of thing. And we thought that was cool. And it was like a really cool, if it was almost like a traveling circus type of thing where it like went to different cities. And so it'll also, as you'll see throughout the series, they go to different places and they take over different cities and not even cities. In some places like a desert or like a mountain or like whatever, it's pretty neat.
A little bit.
Yeah. Now with Ramgod, there obviously, you said before, there's 3 distinct parts to the event itself. Did you guys have a favorite level in writing? Like for me, the fight round was just fantastic. Like I really like there's so many fight styles out there. I also like martial arts. I've done Taekwondo, Kung Fu, Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, okay.
So I always love seeing like this, how.
Don't mess with Ryan. Noted.
But everyone has like the favorite. I could see where like drawing like that, being so behind before he had to ascend, like it was also like really thrilling to watch. Like, is his jetpack gonna make it? You could almost see him falter like right when he got to the top. I was like, oh man, if he drops, like it's over. I don't know if you guys had a favorite track or like a favorite.
I think something to us that was very interesting that we thought of kind of. I'm trying to think of where in the process we thought about it. But as Morgan said, in terms of the structure of the sport, it's like the Olympics, right? Yeah. But at the same time, we wanted to create this sport where your performance in one of the competitions, or heats as we call them, can affect another competition with your teammate playing in that competition.
For context, so like imagine you're watching NASCAR and it's going around in circles, right? There's definitely moments in NASCAR that is exciting and thrilling, but like just watch them go in circles for a while, not my cup of tea personally, right? But if you were to be like, oh, well, what if like you had a teammate that's actually like a UFC fighter, and that teammate, the UFC fighter, can actually unlock NOS, like, you know, that kind of stuff in your car for you by like kicking ass in the ring. Like that was just a concept that we had that we thought was really cool. So we made that like part of like the sport. So while there's a race going on, if you're really far behind, right, which is like, all right, I guess I'll get it next time, or they're going to come in last. There's no way they can catch up. Well, if your fighter like that is maybe a better fighter than their opponent, but you're not as good of a racer and you're on the same team, your teammate can pretty much rack up boosts, right, for you that would allow, they're like Mario Kart, you know, style enhancements, or like Hunger Games style gifts or whatnot, as Owen always says, that you could unlock. They're like in your suit or in your like car or vehicle already. But the crazy thing is like you can't unlock them unless you've like digitally activated,
like a shortcut on a course. That's like
right, what you saw on like Issue 1. So there's all different kinds of like boosts that you can unlock, and they're triggered through different achievements. You can either like find them on the course, or they can be unlocked through certain like milestone bonuses kind of thing.
And they're meant to give, you know, the player a competitive advantage. That's the point. Hence boost.
And here's where the cool, like the world, we had a lot of fun from like a moral standpoint. So we created like the league commissioner, this guy, Marcos Madsen, is this like really eccentric dude that is all about ratings, right? He's like obsessed with them and growing the sport of Ramgod. So he like all of the competitors have jetpacks in their suits, like when the race begins. So that means if you were climbing at any point, like there's enough fuel to like get them to safety, or like a parachute or something like that, right? But they're only unlocked through getting certain like key and, you know, like we said, milestones or whatever else, or you find them in the course. So if you do like, but if someone were to fall, like you'd think the morality behind like the league, they'd be like, activate the parachute, like save them.
Yeah,
they won't.
Something like that.
They won't. Because that's like not how the game, like that's not how you either didn't earn the boost, or it's like you don't really have it in your suit, but you did.
Yeah.
So we thought that was like really cool from like a moral standpoint, that like the league could save a lot of people from dying in it, but they're like, no, that's not how this like. If you want to play it safe, then don't use up your boost, like unless you use it only if you fall. Whereas like, most people are like using their jetpack to like catch up, like as they're climbing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I really liked it because I think the team dynamics of it is interesting, because if you had a riff in your team, you could just sandbag an event and just be like, you know what? No, I'm not going to fight. Good luck.
Mm-hmm. Well, in issue 1, right? You see one of the characters does the opposite, where they let their temper get away from them a little bit and get in trouble for like necessary roughness, and they lose a boost because of that. So that was like
which is really funny now that you've explained that, because the league won't save someone from falling, but they're like, all right, you punched him in the face one too many times. Okay, that's not cool.
Yep.
So that was great. Now, obviously, you guys were writing this for the magazine before you kind of switched it over to Massive. Do you have like the first arc kind of done, outlined, and ready to go, or are you still kind of figuring out the logistics for the end?
Oh, it's done. I mean, it's been done for like 2 years. Not only that, but like the artwork, everything. It's been ready to go for a while. We actually, when we first pitched it to Heavy Metal at the time, because we weren't, like I said, hired as writers. We had the idea and was more like this. We're going to co-own this if we're going to work with anyone. That was like kind of our starting point, right? We made sure that a big thing for Owen and I is anytime we're pitching, we're always like, know your ending. Like you don't have to have it all the details in, but you got to be able to tell someone the answer of like, well, how's it end?
Yeah, like the Breaking Bad approach.
And we had that answer. Like we knew exactly. I'm not going to give that part away on the call, just because that's kind of like the fun part of like, well, what does he choose? Does he choose to like go with his kid, or like kind of go with the sport? Yeah, like you'll tune in to the end to find that out. But I'll tell you this, that we also, as part of our pitch, we also told them where we would take it in season 2 or the next arc. So this is a 6-issue mini arc, which feels like a sort of a season 1 of like a show, or maybe like part 1 of a trilogy in a movie kind of thing, where you're like, oh, that we're just getting started. That's cool. I'm in now. Where do we go from here? And then it like we always as Owen was mentioning earlier, we take that tight lens on a big world, so it makes us kind of like you almost don't see the skyline when you're inside of the city, right? So we don't even like you just see the shadows, and you're like wherever you are, that's where you feel like what you're seeing. It's like you're not even really thinking out that far out. But by the end of like mini arc 1, we kind of pull out a little bit. And now you get to see a little bit more of the world, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. Similar to like Westworld. Did you ever watch the show Westworld? Do you remember like the end of like either season 1 or season 2, and you're like finally you get to see outside of the park?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit, there's like a whole world, and now I get to see what like the future's actually like. Like that was really cool for us. But I love that they started really tight lens so that you get to see the technology and all this epic world building that they've clearly thought out and built, but like you only get to experience a little piece of it.
Yep.
And it gets you almost very curious to see, like, please show me more.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think reading the first issue, my biggest thing was, where else do they go? Is every city like this city that they were just in? My biggest question I found reading it was, like, would the league ever fake someone's death or revive someone that was died on the course and be like, yeah, no, this team definitely has a new mysterious player. We're not, he can't take his helmet off, but it's someone that
I like where your head's at with that. Yeah, that could be in store.
It was, someone who was dead and now they're back for revenge against another team. So yeah, I think that was like a really good suspense to it. So you guys definitely do plan though, like this arc is there, but you have ideas kind of ready for subsequent stories and seasons.
Yeah, we're ready to roll with that too. I mean, like the goal for us is if this one does well enough, then gives us reason to sort of fund the next arc and keep it going. I know Massive has already talked to us. Like they really want to go to number 2, not issue 2, but like arc the next 6 or 8 or however many it's going to be. But we need to make sure that these ones kind of prove that they're selling. It's a business at the end of the day, so we get it. And they're taking a risk, we're not like huge names, not yet anyway. Maybe that'll change at some point soon. Not yet, yeah. But I put it that I don't think there's a lot. I have some hardcore fans, but I don't think there's like people like, oh, it's a Morgan Rosenblum title. Well, I'm in. Not yet anyway. But
definitely not me. As I said, this is my first thing. So,
but I do think it's right. Hashtag Bloomhouse.
Yeah, right, or something like that. Yeah, Brothers Bloom or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What was I going to say though? That I think it was like kind of relevant. Oh yeah. So one of the cool things too that we do in the series is there's 2 primary artists you're going to see. So issue 1 has Kanan White. Issue 2 we switch line artists, same colorist, but that's intentional. The second one is Henry Persetia, and that's done on purpose because we enter the off season at the end of issue 1, right? Like they're coming out of their second or third year. It's kind of ambiguous. We're not sure, but like Ramgod's now entering off season mode, and so it's like a way to kind of visually help you understand when we're in season versus off season. We switch the artists so that it has a slightly different style. They still work well together, but like you're like, oh, okay. Even the way that we start issue 2, it kind of like it's like cool. We're now entering the off season. There's a lot of stuff that can happen in the off season as we're gonna go, and like this is where like the story begins to like kind of tumbleweed or snowball, I should say, right? Where you have like the new rules being introduced, which is every team now needs to add that 5th player, and then finally when the new league year starts up and all the new players are introduced, then we switch back to Kanan. You're like, oh yeah, that like it feels in season, right? Which is kind of a cool thing that we did. And then on top of that, there's a flashback storyline, right? That is done by a completely different artist, Marco Locati. That's like very different style, that not the same colors. Like Marco did his own colors for this, so that anytime we're in the flashback storyline, it has its own vivid color palette, and we think it all really works well together. You guys will be the judge, but we're pretty pumped about that. But it's definitely a stylistic choice. Like it's not just the exact same artist the whole way through. We picked our team very carefully.
Yeah, just having a delineation kind of where your story is. Do you think the colors would change? Because I do like the color for the first issue was really well done.
It's done, dude. So it's like will change. No, it doesn't. It's the same color all the way through.
It's the same colors.
Same, yeah. Ren Spiller. We felt like that keeps the feel like Ramgod. Right?
That's the thing. We're not trying to alternate between it, because also like the flashback artist that we have, Marco Locati, like he does his own colors, and those are obviously very different and distinct. But no, Ren's our colorist for the whole series. He's a brother. So
Yeah.
Like it was also very important that we don't have someone fall in love with an artist and then be like, "What the hell? Are you taking away the guy I love? I got the series not for the story, but for the art or whatever." And then it's like we pulled a fast one on you. It was more like, no, we have a vision for this. Stay with us for the whole ride. You're that artist in a way that feels very like, heck yeah, man. It's like, think about if you were like start a video game out or something like that, and you got like the best video game or the best car or whatever to start. And then they kind of like took it away from you, and then they show you something else. You're like, oh, how am I going to get back to that car kind of thing? And then finally, if you level up and kind of get back to it, right? It feels like it's come full circle for you to a degree.
No,
I don't know.
definitely. Yeah, and I think the most impressive part too with the artwork that I had seen, you guys have some variant colors, or variant covers, and they all look very good. I don't know if you really want to, was variant covers like you really want to do those right away, or is just kind of like as you made the story, you're like, all right, yeah, let's attempt to do a variant cover.
That was honestly more of a massive thing.
Yeah.
That they kind of brought to the table. They were like very future facing, I always say, because Whatnot definitely is kind of a tech company in its own right. And they just kind of understand, I think, where the comic industry is going. And they're great with marketing. And covers and cover variants was not new to us, but definitely was newer to me and a little bit to Morgan. And that was a process that we love. I mean, who wouldn't love working with talented artists, right? That's one of the best and most rewarding parts of what we do. And getting to work with super talented cover artists and kind of work with them on our creative brief and bring these things to life was extremely rewarding. And I love that aspect of comic and graphic novel creation for sure.
Yeah, remember when it was initially supposed to be part of the heavy metal magazine, it's not like we were one of, I don't know, 8 to 12 serial different IPs or stories that were in this anthology magazine. So it's not like we got a new cover every time we had a new issue. We didn't even have like a new cover per issue, let alone variant covers, multiple covers per each issue, right? Yeah. So then when Massive came in and moved it into a comic, and now we're like, oh, cool. So now we're going to get 6 individual covers plus a collected trade cover, right? And then it was like, oh, and variants. And we're like, ooh, what can we do here? So we got real excited with that idea and like, well, how many covers can we do? And they're like, well, for issue number 1, because it's a brand new series, you can do like 8. And we're like, 8? Okay, yeah, like let's get it, And then it was like, who do you want? Which artist do you want? And we were like, we just started throwing names out there. We're like, well, can we get him? What about her? Like, what about they? Like, can we do that? Like, are they available? And then it was like we started reaching out and with the help of Massive and just started putting a really sexy like roster together, almost like we were building a Ramgod team for the covers as well. So we got David Mack to do a cover. Yeah. We got Grimm, who did this really badass one for Elsa. We got Hector Tronic to do a cover. Rob Willis, Carlos Totoli. Like, there's so many good ones to that. There's so many good cover artists that we got to get involved with this. We're also having some of the all of the interior artists are doing their own covers too. So Marco has a cover, Kanan has a cover,
Andre has a cover.
Andre has a cover. So like everyone has a chance to kind of, this is how I see it,
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Very excited. Before we wrap up everything, so when can we expect to get this into everyone's hands?
This month, baby. I think it's July 24th. It's in stores.
That is true.
Awesome.
You can go to your local comic book shop. We are always pushing that as first and foremost. But like, if for whatever reason they don't have it, and you like they say like we're not going to carry it for whatever reason, you can also get it online at massivepublishing.com.
Awesome.
Directly. So yeah, you pick your poison, and then pick from all the cool covers too. Like, get more than one if you want, because they're going to be collector's items, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And I guess one last question before we really go. I'm more curious. Have you ever thought about doing like a connecting cover for this, just because you have so many different teams, and like doing like almost like a Ramgod connecting like cover where like it starts off with like the racing on like one issue and then it's like slowly goes on to others?
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know what you were saying when you were saying connected cover. It's making me think of like
it's like if you were to like almost like think of like a 6-issue like poster that was
I got it. It makes me think of like the old X-Men cards.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking that too.
Exactly where I was going.
Yeah,
actually, we didn't think of that, which is really weird. Now in hindsight, I'm like, what? How did we miss that?
Yeah, that's a great idea, Ryan. We're bringing you in.
All right, perfect. I'm ready.
We're bringing you in. You've had some great creative ideas already.
Yeah, really. I even really like your idea too about like having one of the guys die and not really die, and now they like bring him back. That's a great idea too. That may work its way into season 2.
Offline about this, Ryan.
All right, we'll talk about this. All right, well, we're excited. So we got July 24th. You said we're going to see this in stores, and then after that, are we going month to month?
Yeah. Every month, yeah.
New one's coming out until the 6th issue is out.
And, and for the record too, there's like variant covers for each one of the subsequent issues too, which is neat. I think they trim down with every issue. So I think it was like 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, something like that.
All right, awesome.
But regardless, we got like there's like every month you'll see on like Diamond reviews.
Okay,
or, like, you go like you'll be able to like look in and be like, what are the new covers? And they're all freaking cool. It's not like we just front loaded all the best ones at front. We spread them out. They're all freaking cool.
Yep.
And unique.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Well, we'll be on the lookout. We can't wait to get it. We'll have everything posted here in our comics. Thank you guys for coming on. I'm very excited to see how the story unfolds. And then hopefully we'll have you back for the next, once everyone goes out and buys an issue and we get this next season approved for this, definitely we'll have you back on so we can discuss this further.
Absolutely. We also have a dark fantasy property if anyone of your viewers and listeners are super into that genre and not just cyberpunk stuff.
We do. We got quite a wide variety of people, so we're always interested.
You can have us back to talk about that because we're launching a board game actually that shares the same universe and world as our graphic novel from Dark Horse. So
awesome.
Yeah, we're launching that Kickstarter also this month. So cross promoting that as well.
All right, everyone, be on the lookout.
You actually did ask about, you said we do a connecting cover. Well, we don't have a connecting cover. We do have a cross-pollination type cover where we have a Ramgod cover that's going to be offered potentially as a stretch goal item in our Kickstarter, where we pretty much take 2 of our favorite characters from the Ramgod universe and take them out of cyberpunk and throw them into dark medieval fantasy. And like, you get to see what they would look like in the Winds of New Masera sort of world. And we have a cover for that's going to run.
Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, definitely. Everyone stay tuned because once I get that link, I'll have it on our Instagram and everything.
Yeah.
Thank you guys
we'll give you all the links.
Perfect. Thank you guys for coming on and answering all of our questions. Everyone, be on the lookout later this June. Ramgod issue 1.
Get it while you can.
July.
The press. Perfect. Yeah, July. All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys later. Everyone, if you like this, what you heard here, you could find this episode and more wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Everyone listening, thanks for coming on and have a good night.
Take care. Thanks, man.